remember the exact moment I knew something was fundamentally broken in this family. Not cracked, not bruised, but broken, like a bone that sets wrong and heals worse. It was a Sunday in October, the kind that tricks you into thinking everything is fine because the light is golden and the air smells like cinnamon and the leaves are burning red across our street in Buckhead, Atlanta. My daughter Zoe was sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, her 9-year-old hands hovering over the keyboard of her MacBook like she was playing piano. She'd earned that laptop. Let me be absolutely clear about that because people in this family have a bad habit of rewriting history. 6 months of straight A's, honor roll twice, a science fair project on water filtration that her 4th grade teacher called the best she'd seen in 15 years. My husband Devlin and I had promised her a reward, $1,600, a MacBook, hers. His mother, Lorraine Beaumont, was seated at my dining room table, eating the brunch I had cooked, scrolling her phone like she owned the room. She always sat like she owned rooms she didn't own. 58 years old, silver hair blown out like a network anchor, a smile that never quite touched her eyes. I'd been married to her son for 11 years, and she'd smiled at me that way for all 11 of them. I was in the kitchen, refilling mimosas nobody had asked for, because that's what I did in those years. I kept filling glasses, kept the surfaces clean, kept the peace. I was a professional peacekeeper. Summa cum laude in pretending everything is fine. That's when I heard it. "Zoe, baby, come here." Lorraine's voice had this particular frequency when she wanted something. Honey poured over gravel. I turned from the counter without moving my feet, the way you do when your body goes alert before your brain catches up. What followed was short, surgical, and devastating. Lorraine told my 9-year-old daughter that her cousin Brixton didn't have a computer for school, that it would be beautiful if Zoe gave hers away, that it takes a real special person to give a gift. And then, the part that calcified something in me permanently, she told Zoe that if she refused, she should no longer call her grandma. I walked out of the kitchen, not toward the situation, toward my child. "Zoe," I said, quiet and steady, "go upstairs, baby." Zoe read the room the way smart kids do, tucked the laptop against her chest, and went. Then Lorraine looked at me and smiled. "I'm just trying to teach her about generosity." "You're trying to take my 9-year-old's laptop and give it to your grandson. Brixton's father has a Porsche. Brixton needs nothing I'm obligated to provide." She didn't argue. She repositioned. That was always her move. "I think you need to leave my dining room table," I said. That was the opening move. Neither of us knew yet how long the game had left to go. My name is Serafina Caldwell, Sarah to the people I actually like, and I did not grow up with money. East Point apartment, mother who worked double shifts at Grady Memorial, father who made the best biscuits in Georgia and couldn't hold a job for 6 consecutive months. I put myself through Georgia State on scholarships and loans I paid off alone. I met Devlin Beaumont in my 2nd year of law school. Charming, tall, laughed big, the kind of laugh that fills a room. He came from a family that had been wealthy for 2 generations in Atlanta real estate. I thought I was marrying the man. I didn't understand yet that I was marrying the family. The Beaumonts were a specific kind of old Atlanta money, territorial about every penny that moved in or out of the bloodline. Lorraine ran the family the way a general runs a campaign, with patience, strategy, and a complete absence of mercy. After Devlin's father, Roland, died, she controlled Beaumont Property Group, commercial real estate across 5 Georgia counties. Devlin worked there, his brother Preston worked there, even Preston's wife, Gail, who had the backbone of warm bread, worked there. I did not work there. I was a litigation attorney at Caldwell and Drake, a firm I'd built from the ground up with my law school best friend, Dominique Drake. We were doing well, better than well. I had a reputation for being methodical, relentless, and absolutely allergic to losing. That reputation had been built in courtrooms across the state of Georgia, and I want you to understand that because it matters later. It matters a lot. The laptop incident was not isolated. It was the loudest so far, built on a foundation of smaller ones. The Christmas, Lorraine rearranged my living room furniture while I cooked. Her birthday, she gave Zoe $50 from Daddy's family, as though I had no part in producing the child. The Thanksgiving, she invited 12 people to my house without asking, texting only, "Setting up at 3, be ready." The conversation she'd had with Devlin, which he told me about 3 months after the fact, suggesting I was too career-focused and that it might explain why Zoe was struggling to form attachments. Zoe was not struggling. Zoe was 9 and perfect. Her only struggle was that her grandmother had decided to make her a pawn. What nobody in the Beaumont family had ever factored into their calculations, I had been watching all of them for 11 years. Attorneys make notes. Lorraine left that Sunday with a smile still on her face. I closed the front door, stood in the foyer, listened to the house breathe. Then I went upstairs to my daughter. Zoe was at her desk working on a book report, what she always did when adults made things weird. She threw herself into something productive. I sat on her bed. "Grandma was going to take my laptop," she said, not looking up. "She was going to try." "What's the difference?" "The difference is whether I'm in the room." She nodded like it made complete sense, turned back to her report, and I sat there watching her type and felt something crystallize inside me, cold, clear, like water turning to ice and feeling the molecular change before you can see it. Something was ending. I didn't know exactly what yet. When Devlin came home, late, always late that fall, I told him what happened, calmly, factually, no dramatics, just the record. He stood in our kitchen loosening his tie, and when I finished, he said, "She was probably just trying to do something nice for Brixton." I looked at my husband. "She told our 9-year-old that if she refused, she could no longer call her grandma." "I'll talk to her when things calm down." "What needs to calm down? I'm presenting you with a situation. Our daughter was emotionally manipulated in our home." He pulled a beer from the fridge, didn't offer me one. "Sarah, I know my mother can be a lot." I didn't answer. I picked up my reading glasses and my case file, went to my office, closed the door, opened my laptop, and started making notes. Devlin did not talk to his mother, not that week, not the next. He had dinner with her twice in October, and both times came home lighter, absolved of something. I recognized it the way you recognize a smell you can't name that sits wrong before you can say why. November. The Beaumont family Thanksgiving, held every year at the compound in Buckhead, a 6,000 square foot Tudor that Lorraine maintained as though it were a monument to herself. 14 people, attention you could slice and serve alongside the turkey. I sat across from Gail, who looked at me the way women look at each other when they both know something is wrong, but neither is first to say it. I'd always felt something like sympathy for Gail. She'd married in before I did, had been subsumed in ways I'd been fighting off, and I suspected she held the kind of information only women who have given up tend to notice. We'd never been close. The Beaumont family had a talent for isolating its wives from each other, keeping us just adjacent enough to observe one another, but never quite close enough to compare notes. After dinner, while the men watched football and Lorraine held court, Gail found me in the bathroom hallway, looked left, looked right, like someone in a film right before they say something dangerous. "I need to tell you something," she said. I kept my face neutral. "Okay?" "Lorraine has been managing Devlin, running strategy on your marriage. She wants the family assets structured a certain way before—" She stopped herself. "Before what?" Gail's eyes went very still. "Before you and Devlin potentially split." The house made no sound, 14 people in it, and I couldn't hear a single one. "She's been preparing for a divorce?" "She's been engineering one," I said. "How long have you known this?" "Long enough that I'm ashamed I didn't say something sooner." I put my hand on her arm, briefly. "Thank you." Then I walked back to the dining room, picked up my wine glass, and smiled at my mother-in-law across the table. She smiled back. Neither of us blinked. We understood each other perfectly. The game had a new shape now. People think information makes you act. They think the natural response to knowing something is doing something. But the best litigators, the ones who don't just win but devastate, they know that information makes you wait. Information is a resource, and resources squandered impulsively are resources wasted. I called Dominique Drake the next morning. Dominique had been my best friend since law school. Brilliant, terrifying in a courtroom, an instinct for people that was almost supernatural. She knew every forensic accountant, every private investigator, every family law specialist in Georgia. She also had no love for Lorraine Beaumont, whom she'd met once at a firm dinner and described afterward as a very well-dressed sociopath. I need a favor. How big? Medium-sized right now, potentially growing. She made her calls. Over the following 6 weeks, Dominique's people built a picture that was more and less surprising than I expected. More surprising, Lorraine had quietly restructured a portion of the Beaumont's property group portfolio, moving 4 commercial properties from a jointly held family LLC to a separate trust, to one that I had no access to, no visibility, no rights under our existing marital agreement. Less surprising, Devlin had known, had signed off on it, had in fact signed the documents the same week he told me he'd talked to his mother about the laptop. There was a third thing, unexpected, separate from the financial picture. Dominique's investigators surfaced it quietly. I will tell you about it at the right time. Timing in litigation and in life is everything. By January, I had a file. By February, it had become a comprehensive cross-referenced dossier. Encrypted hard drive, fireproof lockbox, bottom drawer, under old deposition transcripts nobody ever touched. I kept going to Lorraine's dinners, kept smiling, brought wine and asked after Preston's kids, and helped Miss Effie clear the plates, said nothing that cost me anything. Devlin noticed nothing because he was looking for changes, and I had not changed at all. That was the plan. March. Zoe's school spring showcase. A big deal. Parents packed into the gymnasium, kids presenting projects, 1,000 photos. Zoe had been working on sustainable agriculture. Genuinely extraordinary. My kid was extraordinary, and in a story about adult failures and betrayals, it matters to say that clearly. Zoe was not backdrop. She was the reason for every single thing I was doing. The showcase was Thursday evening. Devlin had promised to be there. He wasn't there. I sat in that gymnasium beside his empty chair, his mother on my other side, and watched my daughter present her project to a crowd of parents. When Zoe looked out, I made sure I was the one she found. Her eyes landed on mine. I held up both thumbs, and she lit up like a sunrise. For that moment, it was enough. But I noticed Lorraine watching me watch Zoe, something calculating in it. She was assessing what I was worth as a variable in an equation she'd been solving for years. Devlin texted at 8:47. Traffic. So sorry. Did she do great? I texted back. She was wonderful. When Zoe was asleep and he'd come in with the energy of a man preloading contrition, I sat across from him in the living room and asked a question he wasn't expecting. Are you happy? He recalibrated. What? In this marriage, in this life, are you happy? He looked at me a long time. What I saw in his eyes was not guilt, not love, not confusion. It was relief. The specific relief of someone who's been hoping someone else would open a door they've been afraid to open themselves. I think I've been checked out for a while, he said. I know that's not fair. It's not. We talked about separation, honestly, for the first time, and then I told him quietly, I need you to understand that I know everything. Whatever comes next, decide right now whether you're going to be straight with me or whether you want to find out what happens when I'm not. What do you mean you know everything? I mean, I know about the trust restructuring, the 4 properties. I know your mother has been running a playbook for 18 months to minimize my position before any split. I paused. And I mean, I know about Memphis. His face went white. Memphis was not a place. Memphis was a woman, Temperance Wiley, 31, junior partner at a commercial real estate firm in Midtown Atlanta. She had been seeing my husband for approximately 14 months. Dominique's investigator had found her in week 3, which told me the affair was not exactly hidden, just hidden from me specifically, the way things in the Beaumont orbit were always hidden from me specifically. Her nickname was Memphis. She was from Memphis originally. She posted brunches and workout selfies, and once, 6 months prior, a photo from a restaurant in Savannah that I recognized because Devlin had told me he'd been there for a conference that same weekend. I had looked at that Instagram page one time, just once, long enough to understand what I was looking at, to feel what I needed to feel about it. Then I closed it and put the feelings somewhere it could not run the show. I had bigger things to run. Devlin didn't know I knew until this moment, sitting across from me at 9:30 on a Thursday, his daughter asleep upstairs, my face completely composed. "Did you tell your mother?" I asked. The way his jaw moved told me everything before his mouth did. "She found out. I didn't tell her. She found out and she said she wouldn't say anything as long as what? As long as things got handled the right way, financially, the trust restructuring. She said it was protection for the family." I sat very, very still. "You used your affair as leverage to get you to sign over assets that are partially mine." He had the decency to look physically sick. "And you let her," I said. "You let her do that." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. I stood up, straightened my sweater, looked at my husband of 11 years. "Okay, thank you for being honest." I walked upstairs, got into bed, went to sleep. In the morning, I called Dominique before Devlin woke and said 4 words. "We're moving to phase 2. Phase 2 was not born of rage. Rage is messy and self-defeating. Phase 2 was architecture, precise, considered, built to hold weight. The first element was legal. I had been quietly consulting with Renata Osei, the most respected family law attorney in Fulton County, a woman Lorraine had once publicly dismissed as aggressive. I'd retained Renata in January. By March, she had reviewed the trust restructuring, consulted with forensic accountant Dr. Philip Okoye, and prepared a legal opinion that was, in her words, about as clear-cut as I've seen. The trust restructuring, marital assets moved without my knowledge or consent, was fraudulent concealment of marital property under Georgia law. The 4 commercial properties, worth approximately $3.1 million at current valuation, had been moved without my signature on documents that required it. There was a 6-month window to challenge and void them. We were at month 5. The second element was financial independence. Caldwell and Drake had generated $2.3 million in revenue the previous year. My personal equity was substantial. I had also, over 2 years, quietly diversified my own assets, not because I was planning to leave my marriage, but because a deeply ingrained instinct from a childhood of financial precarity told me a woman should always have her own parachute. I had liquidity, I had assets in my name only, I had a floor they could not reach. The third element required patience. I needed Lorraine to move first. Not because I needed more evidence, I had the evidence, but because I needed it to happen in front of witnesses. I needed people to see who she was, not just Devlin, not just Gail, people who would remember. So I waited. I maintained the surface, I attended the dinners and brought the wine and smiled the smile. 2 more months. I let Lorraine believe the game was still hers. And then, on a Saturday in May I will remember for the rest of my life, she made her move. Lorraine called an informal lunch, the language she used when she wanted guards down. Her house in Buckhead. Devlin and I arrived together because appearances, until I was done with appearances, still served a purpose. Present, Lorraine, Devlin, Preston and Gail, Lorraine's sister Patricia and her husband Raymond, the longtime family attorney Gerald Fisk, Devlin's aunt Clara, who'd flown in from Charleston, and two individuals who turned out to be representatives from a property management group Lorraine was courting as a business partner. She'd brought witnesses of her own. Interesting move. We ate, we talked. Nobody said what everyone was there to say. That was the Beaumont way. Circle the airport for 40 minutes before you land. Then Lorraine set down her fork. Serafina, with everything going on, all the change and uncertainty, I think it might be time for a frank conversation about the family's future. I'm always available for frank conversations, Lorraine. She folded her hands, told me things had been strained between Devlin and me, that anyone could see it, that she thought as a family they needed to think about what was best for everyone, including Zoe. Including Zoe. There it was. She said she wanted things to be cordial, dignified, that the business, the properties, needed to stay whole, for the next generation, for Zoe's future, actually. Gerald Fisk opened a briefcase, slid the separation agreement framework across the table. I let him open it, I let him slide the papers, I let everyone in that room see the moment when I was supposed to fold. Then I looked at Lorraine and said, I'd like to make a counter-proposal. Something shifted in her eyes, just slightly. I reached into my bag, a structured leather tote because a woman about to end a war brings the right bag, and placed 3 documents on the table. The first document, I said, is a copy of the fraudulent trust restructuring from October of last year, accompanied by a legal opinion from Renata Osei documenting how those transactions violated Georgia marital property statutes. I pushed it across. The second is a forensic accounting analysis by Dr. Philip Okoye showing the discrepancy in asset valuation and the instruments used to conceal marital property. Gerald Fisk had stopped breathing. And the third, I looked at Devlin when I said it, is a certified statement from a licensed investigator documenting the affair, its duration, and the specific conversation in which, Lorraine, you leveraged knowledge of your son's infidelity to coerce him into signing documents that defrauded me. The table was so quiet I could hear the ceiling fan. What I am offering, I said, looking only at Lorraine now, is a choice. Agree today, in front of all these people, to void the trust restructuring and restore the properties to their correct marital valuation. Devlin and I will proceed with a divorce that is fair, documented, and clean. Zoe will have stability. No litigation, no court filing, no press. I paused. Or we do this the other way, and I want to be honest with you. I have been a litigation attorney for 14 years. I've won every major case I've tried in the last 6 years, and if you make me go to court, I will not just recover those properties, I will open the books, all of them, and I will find everything. Devlin's face had gone completely still. Lorraine was looking at me like she might look at a piece of furniture that had unexpectedly moved and stood up. You've been planning this, she said. You started planning before I did. I just finished better. Gail pushed back her chair and started clapping. Soft at first, barely audible, the sound of someone who has been waiting a long time and is finally doing the thing with her whole heart. Nobody clapped, but nobody stopped her either. Devlin stood up. He stood up from that table, looked at his mother, and something passed between them that I can only call the end of something, or maybe the honest beginning of what should have started years ago. She's right, Mom, he said. Quiet. Not defeat. The quiet of a man finally standing somewhere firm. She's right about all of it. I signed those papers because you told me you'd expose the affair if I didn't. That's what happened. That's the truth. And I let it happen because I was a coward. He looked at me. I've been a coward in this marriage for a long time, and Sarah deserved better. And so does Zoe. Gerald Fisk gathered his papers. The property management representatives made their excuses. Aunt Clara reached across the table and put her hand briefly over mine. That small gesture landed somewhere deep. Preston said quietly, I didn't know about the documents. I want that on the record. Noted, I said. Gail squeezed my hand under the table. Lorraine said nothing more, not that afternoon. We left within the hour. The drive home was nearly silent. Zoe was at a friend's house, home by 5, and I was already thinking about what we'd eat for dinner, whether she needed a bath before bed, how I was going to tell her, in simple, loving, child-appropriate words, that some things were going to change, but she was going to be completely okay. She was going to be completely okay. I was going to make sure of it. The divorce was finalized in September. Renata Usay and I sat across from Gerald Fisk and Lorraine's new attorney, and we negotiated. The trust restructuring was voided. The 4 properties were returned to the marital estate and divided in the settlement. I did not take them all. I did not want them all. I wanted what was fair, and I wanted it documented, and I wanted to be done. What I took? My share of the marital home, sold at market, a cash settlement reflecting my accurate marital stake, my business, untouched, which was never their business to begin with, and a joint custody arrangement for Zoe built around her schedule, her school, her friendships, her well-being, not Beaumont family convenience. What Lorraine had tried to take? Everything. What Lorraine ended up with? The knowledge that she'd tried. The day the papers were signed, I drove to East Point and sat in the parking lot near Grady Memorial, where my mother had worked double shifts for most of my childhood. I sat there 15 minutes. Something about needing to be near the beginning, near the person who taught me that you hold on with both hands and you do not let people tell you what you're worth. I called my mother. "It's done," I said. How do you feel?" I thought about it. Like myself. Maybe more like myself than I've felt in a long time. "Good. Come eat. I made biscuits." "Daddy's recipe? Who else's recipe would I use?" I laughed. I drove to East Point. I ate biscuits at my mother's kitchen table, and Zoe sat next to me drawing a horse with her whole small self focused on the mane, and I thought about all the words for love and how none of them are big enough. The aftermath. The public accounting, whether Lorraine Beaumont felt it. She felt it. Not through press exposure, that scatters in directions you can't control, and I'm not built for it, but in the quiet, tectonic way that matters more in old Atlanta money circles. Gerald Fisk retired the following spring. 3 of the Beaumont Property Group's subsidiary partnerships renegotiated their terms over the following 18 months. The property management firm that had been in the room that May, witnesses to Lorraine's play, to her losing the hand, chose not to enter into business with the Beaumonts. Word travels. Gail and Preston quietly separated the following spring. Gail called me in March. I listened for a long time and gave her Renata Usay's number. And I told her the first year was the hardest and that she would be okay. She believed me. She should. I know what I'm talking about. Devlin and I managed something I can only call a functional evolution. Not friends, not enemies. 2 people who share a daughter and have agreed, implicitly and explicitly, to do that one thing right, even if we did everything else badly. He got into therapy. He stopped drinking as much. He missed Zoe's school events 0 times in the first year after the divorce. I gave credit where it was owed. Lorraine sent me a text in November. Just one. "You underestimated me." I read it 3 times, thought about a response, ranging from gracious to devastating, and landed eventually on something true. I didn't respond at all. Some things don't need a final word. The final word had already been said in that dining room in May, with 3 documents on a table and a family lawyer's hands shaking, and a woman who had built her power on the assumption that the people around her were never ready. I had been ready for years. October again. A year passed where this story began. Same golden Atlanta light, same cinnamon and leaves smell. Zoe and I are in our apartment. A good apartment, a clean space. Mine. And she is at the kitchen counter doing homework, and I am making pasta and the radio is on low. "Mom?" she says, not looking up. "Yeah, Bug? Can I ask you something kind of big?" "Always." "Do you think Grandma Lorraine loves us, or did she just love what we represented?" I put down the wooden spoon. I look at my 10-year-old daughter, who has her grandmother's directness and my analytical brain, and her own brand of wisdom I couldn't have manufactured. I think some people love the idea of family more than the actual people in it, I say. And that's a kind of love, but it's conditional. It's love with a checklist. Like she loved us if we were useful. Yeah, kind of like that. That's sad. It is sad. But you love me without a checklist. Without a checklist, without conditions, without an expiration date, without fine print. She nods, satisfied, goes back to her homework. The pasta boils. The radio plays something I don't recognize but like. The light through the kitchen window is gold and late and honest. After dinner, she comes to say goodnight in her oversized sleep shirt with the cartoon frog on it, smelling like soap, wet hair pushed back from her face. Mom? Yeah? I love you. I love you so much more. That's mathematically impossible. We'd need to define the units of measurement. Go to sleep, baby. She grinned, my mother's grin, not Devlin's, mine, and padded off to her room. I listened to her door close and sat in the quiet of my own living room and breathed, like a woman who had been holding her breath for 11 years and had only recently remembered she didn't have to. The MacBook was on the coffee table where she'd left it, the rocket sticker still intact, the scratch near the trackpad from when she dropped it in 2nd grade. Whole. Hers. Not given away, not leveraged, not taken. Some things are exactly what they were meant to be, and nobody gets to tell a 10-year-old girl that love has a price. Not on my watch. Not ever again.